The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here. All the years of waiting, the leaks, the rumors, the weird internet patents are finally over. This, supposedly, is what we've all been waiting for, and depending on what you were waiting for, the Switch 2 may land with either fanfare or a dull thud. Let's talk about it. Because my friends and family know I work in games media, the question I've been asked about the Switch 2 most since it was announced properly in February is, what's different about it? And the answer is, quite a bit actually. The screen, it's bigger and nicer. The Joy-Cons can be used as a very effective mouse input. The speakers have been properly treated and sound way nicer. The built-in microphone used for game chat is shockingly good even when used from across a room. The HD rumble has been upgraded with vibrating electromagnets to feel way better. Upscaling Switch 1 games to higher res and silky smooth 60 frames is great. The trouble is, while certainly interesting to the committed video games enjoyer like you and I, these are the kinds of changes that may not be all that interesting to the average punter. The short answer to the simple yet complicated question of what's different is, it's a bigger, faster, more powerful version of the Nintendo Switch 1. If what you want is a Nintendo Switch with a bigger screen and more graphical grunt, now you have it. That grunt does appear to come at the price of battery life in handheld mode, which is significantly diminished on its predecessor. Playing Cyberpunk 2077 in handheld mode at 75% brightness and the volume at less than 50%, I was able to get just over 2 hours out of the tablet before it was asking for a recharge. This puts it in the realm of handheld PCs like the Steam Deck for power draw. Something to keep in mind if you're planning to travel with it. One thing working against the system is a broad lack of what I would call Nintendo wow factor. When the late great Satoru Iwata became company president in the 2000s, Nintendo embarked on an era of hardware design that prioritized unique gameplay opportunities over the graphics arms race favored by its competitors. The Nintendo DS, the Wii, the Wii U, and the Switch, Iwata's final project before his untimely passing in 2015, all boasted unique designs that initially baffled the hardcore, but made perfect sense the moment you got your hands on them. The Switch 1's wow factor was its portability, its effortless conversion from handheld to living room console. The Switch 2 arrives in a world where that's become old hat. Handheld gaming PCs are everywhere. Portability isn't the unique feature it used to be. Rather, the Switch 2 is a model of traditionally conservative Japanese business strategy. Stick with what works. Make it faster and more muscular and go again. Committed to rocking the boat in the name of invention, one wonders if Iwata would have signed off on this. This plays into another serious downside for me, the broad lack of change to the console's handheld form factor. With the Switch 2, Nintendo is still putting a thin, light silhouette ahead of any serious ergonomic considerations. Kids may find it a touch too large for their little hands, while adults with larger hands may still find it painful to grip during longer sessions. The reality is that wrapping your hands around the Switch 2 simply doesn't feel as comfortable as something more sculpted to the hand, like a Steam Deck or a Legion Go S. There will be third-party accessories to help with this, of course, but Nintendo should be solving this problem on its own. The success of any Nintendo platform is directly tied to the success of its first-party library, and in this case, the Nintendo Switch 2 is off to a particularly slow start. The Switch 2 launches with just 2 new first-party platform exclusives, Mario Kart World and Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. The former, the latest in the widely popular racing franchise, is attempting to improve on Mario Kart 8's decade of perfection. The latter is a brief, inoffensive tour of the hardware that should be a pack-in, but for which Nintendo is charging $15. Its remaining first-party titles are upgraded versions of popular Switch 1 games like Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Party Jamboree that stalwarts likely already own. Though Mario Kart World may be more than enough incentive for the diehards, Nintendo seems to be banking on big third-party support being a short-term draw. Switch owners with no access to other gaming platforms will suddenly find themselves drowning in current-gen riches like Cyberpunk 2077, Hitman, Yakuza 0, Street Fighter 6, and Bravely Default. But for those that bought a PS5 or own a gaming PC, it's hardly exciting. The Switch 2's launch window bench is stacked with games that have been available elsewhere for a while. Even the notion of portable Cyberpunk 2077 is watered down because the Steam Deck made that possible years ago. The final selling point is its broad backwards compatibility with Switch 1 games, most of which the hardware seems to upscale to 1440p at higher frame rates. This is fantastic for those few remaining souls that have never bought a Switch and means you access a giant library of games right away. It's also plug and play for basically everything but the old Labo kits, meaning there's little stuffing around to get everything working, though the new game card system may baffle those who aren't chronically immersed in the gaming hobby. For those upgrading, it's certainly a pleasant bonus, but I wonder if it will meaningfully tip the scales toward a purchase. Of course, there's still a long road ahead for the Switch 2, with plenty of heavy hitters to come and an awful lot of them. In fact, as we head into Christmas, I fully expect Switch 2 sales to go berserk as people get around games like Pokemon ZA and the hype takes over. And while we're on the topic, how about that price point? At $699 for the console by itself, or $750 if you want a copy of Mario Kart World with it, it feels like a lot of Australians currently stuck in a cost of living crisis are going to struggle to afford an upgrade to a Switch 2. The broad lack of clear wow factor may also contribute to a feeling of consumer bristle. $700 for what? Is the repeated grumble I've heard from friends and community. Bit of an upgrade on the same thing, and they aren't wrong. For a machine not much more powerful than a PS4 Pro, a system that launched a scant few months before the original Switch, the price point is certainly testing the friendship. And it isn't like that price is set to drop anytime soon either. The current generation of games hardware has been marked by price increases rather than price drops. The PS5 and Xbox Series X, both 5 years old, recently broke with tradition and put their prices up in response to tariffs and other economic difficulties. Nintendo isn't immune to this, and it was already hesitant to lower the price of its hardware or its first-party titles. Outside of strict seasonal sales where you'll never see them cheaper than 20% off, Nintendo banks on the quality of its product and sells its heaviest hitters for full price their entire lives. What this adds up to is Nintendo's least affordable console in decades, and once the launch hype wears off, I do think that will be its biggest barrier to entry. I've done a lot of whinging so far, which means we can now talk about the things the Switch 2 does right. First of all, the screen in handheld mode is gorgeous. It's bigger than the original Switch and somehow vastly more beautiful without being a proper OLED. It's a bit of a technological magic trick in this way, seemingly blending a high frame rate display with high brightness pixels. If you carve off a little extra for Welcome Tour, it will actually walk you through exactly how intricate the design behind this screen really is. The mouse controls, used by snapping on a small attachment to either Joy-Con and turning the controller on its side, are a small jolt of that beloved Nintendo wow factor. It's the best and most thoughtful implementation of mouse controls on a console I've ever seen. The motion is fluid, accurate, and the sensitivity can be scaled up or down depending on preference. Its high-resolution sensor allows the mouse controls to work well on almost any surface, up to and including your own pants or couch cushion. I can see this opening the door to a ton of strategy games making the jump to the Switch 2, and they'll feel so good to play this way. Watch Xbox and Sony rush to copy this feature, hoping to capitalize on yet another underserved market sector Nintendo has just casually blown wide open. But it's the built-in microphone used with the new game chat platform that is the feature that most blew me away. With the Switch 2 placed in its dock clear across the room, a good 4 or 5 meters away, the microphone was able to pick up my voice and scrub any background noise clear as a bell. Indeed, Nintendo has built the software that drives the microphone to scrub all background noise, even something as loud and consistent as a vacuum cleaner, to only capture player voices. There is just one external noise Nintendo has allowed the microphone to capture outside of voice, and that's the clapping of hands. The mic can specifically pick out the sound of clapping and send it through. Why? According to Nintendo, it's because it didn't want to cut out a sound of joy and excitement, which is wild. Laughter is also a sound of joy, but why settle for that when you can perform a bit of technological magic? Fair warning though, the mic will brutally feed back if there are 2 Switch consoles in the same game chat in the same room. My housemate and I tried to join the same Mario Kart World game with friends, and she had to mute her mic because the instant feedback reverb was tearing everyone's ears apart. Nintendo sent us 2 specific peripherals for this review. The first was the Pro Controller 2, and the second was the camera. That one I can review really easily. It's fine. It's not a brilliant webcam by any means, but it does the job, zooming in from across the room to let people see your gurning face in-game if you'd really like them to. In my opinion, without a serious use case in future games, this is mostly a gimmick and a feature that will, with time, become a vestigial limb. The Pro Controller 2, however, is another great higher-grade controller from Nintendo. It doesn't have all the ridiculous bells and whistles of competitors like the Xbox Elite Series 2 or the PlayStation DualSense Edge. Rather, it takes the baseline controller and refines every facet. The Pro Controller 2 is comfortable to hold, its buttons and sticks feel good and solid when pressed, and its triggers are springy and responsive. It also features a pair of subtle buttons on the rear where Sony and Xbox's controllers put their optional paddles. I think this is an excellent Pro tier controller, one that cuts the crap and focuses on mastering the fundamentals. Highly recommended. The Switch 2 is a safe, uncomplicated successor to Nintendo's record-breaking original. The phrase "steady as she goes" carved in silicon and plastic. Its inherent familiarity means the new hardware honeymoon period is short-lived, but maybe that's okay. I doubt its target audience, families, and the average player on the street will mind a jot in the long run. It's the hardcore and the lifers, people like me and you, trained to expect a shiny new toy with every generation, that expect more. What it lacks in Iwata-esque imagination, it tries to make up for with improved hardware. What it lacks in hardware, it tries to make up for with a brassy new take on Mario Kart. What it lacks in a wider roster of first-party bangers at launch, it tries to make up for with deeper third-party support. At launch, the Nintendo Switch 2 is a strange little console. It is both rock solid and far too expensive, constructed entirely out of concessions to greater external problems. It doesn't really get anything wrong, and the things that it gets right, it gets very right. But its commitment to staying the course means it isn't as exciting as it could be. Its launch is awkwardly timed, and without some surprise drops between now and Christmas, that puts it in a holding pattern until Pokemon can come to the rescue in October. To buy the Switch 2 now is to do so on the promise of better days to come, on the promise that its first-party roster will fill out, that more and varied third-party stuff will come along to fill in the gaps, that the Switch 2 will continue the original Switch's unbroken run of quality games on really versatile hardware. You'll just have to figure out how to afford it first.